أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا. اللهم افتح على أسماعنا وأبصارنا وأفئدتنا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, today we'll continue the remainder of the hadith, the two hadith we started last time that was related to the event when the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh to Yemen, and then he gave him the advice. Inshallah, we're going to finish these two hadith and then move on to an important hadith that follows, inshallah. So, at the previous lecture we discussed the concept of Tawheed and then the concept of graduality and progression of the teachings, the implementation of the rules, the practices, and how that applies to our life. So the remainder of the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh, that then after they do that, after the Tawheed, then you instruct them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has required them the 5 daily prayers, right? And we talked about that. And then it was أن الله فرض عليهم زكاة من أموالهم وترد على فقرائهم فإذا أطاعوا بها فخذ منهم وتوق كرائم أموالهم. So this is the part that we learned. Then after they fulfill the 5 daily prayers, which basically serves as a measure to the compliance with the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, with their adherence to the commands of the faith, then you move to the practical aspect, which is the zakah. And again, when we discussed the arkan of Islam, we mentioned how the Tawheed, the Salah, this is the relationship between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you build that foundation, you have that bond, you have a strong faith, then everything follows. Then it comes basically, that's when the zakah comes. It is very illogical to ask them to do the zakah when they're not doing the prayer, right? Because when it comes to wealth, when it comes to giving, that's very sensitive, right? People become very kind of protective. So once the salah washes their hearts, once they establish that bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes easier. Then you ask them or you instruct them that Allah has prescribed the zakah on them, meaning, and this is very specific actually term here that we addressed before, تؤخذ من أموالهم وترد على فقرائهم, that out of their wealth back to their poor people. And that's what the scholar says. The zakah of the man, of the wealth, where the wealth is, typically comes out from the community where the zakah is invested and goes back to the community, right? And that's you can link it to what we discussed economically, because that's basically stimulation to the economy and also benefiting the people who are part of that system. And that's why it is in an ideal scenario, the zakah is better spent where the money is produced or the money is invested. Where is the hadith that supports it? This hadith actually. This hadith is often quoted. Why the zakah is better spent where it's produced. When we spoke about the zakah, we did mention that scholars said sometimes if there is a need, a dire need to transfer the zakah from one place to another for a better interest, for a valid reason, where you think the zakah can do more, then it is okay. Right? Such as there is a disaster, catastrophe, war, people are dying, starvation, and probably you can transfer or reallocate the funds basically. Right? And then he gave them one important advice, that then ittaqi karaima amwalihim, meaning stay away from the most dear parts of their wealth. Meaning, because the way the zakah was done, or is practically done, you send, just like there were like tax collectors, there were zakah collectors as well. So the zakah collector would go make an assessment of the wealth, and if it's crops, then we take out of the crops the 10% or the 5%, depending whether it was naturally watered or artificially watered. And if it's animals, they will take, out of the 40 camels, they will take, or out of the 4 sheep, they will take 1. So there is like formula. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling him, you stay away from what's the best to them. Meaning, like, take it easy on them. You're influencing or you're enforcing the rules, but at the same time, don't go overboard to a point where it becomes hated, disliked. And this is a very important rule, subhanAllah. You don't go and say, okay, what's the best camel that you have here? Okay, let's take this first camel. Right? And the best part of the crops, okay, let's take that for the zakat. Right? You're already, here, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ is taking into consideration the human nature. Yes, these are believers, probably they're happy to give up everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in general, humans are humans, and the human nature is you're protective over your wealth. And it is, some people, you take $1 away, it's like you're taking half of their soul with it. So the Prophet ﷺ is taking that into consideration, that you stay away from the best of their wealth, you don't offend them, you do not dishearten them. Right? And this is very important. So someone tells you, okay, if you make $1 million, we're going to take 90% of it. That's not a good thing, right? Because then you're going to hate the rules, and you're going to hate the system, and you're going to hate everything, right? Here the Prophet ﷺ is still considering the feelings, the emotions that's attached to wealth, and that's very important to keep in mind. It is interesting that it's the same event in a different hadith, same thing, the narrator is Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. And he's telling, the Prophet ﷺ is telling Mu'adh, وَاتَّقِ دَعْوَةَ الْمَظْلُومِ, right? فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. Right? So pretend this hadith is the same one, because the Prophet ﷺ probably gave him several pieces of advice, right? So once, one of them was this part, and then in different occasions they said, okay, well, he also told them this. So you need to piece it together. But now you can actually see where this is going, because now the Prophet ﷺ is given a general advice that serves as advice for everyone who's in charge, whether the head of the state, whether a representative of the state, whether the head of the community, whether a teacher, whenever you are in charge of any people, then that rule applies. It says, and then beware of the dua, the prayer of a person who's wrong, an oppressed person. For there is no barrier between that da'wah, that prayer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? This advice, what is that telling us? When there is oppression, when there is wrongdoing, when there is injustice, basically. This is again, the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking 1400 years ago to Mu'adh, going to Yemen. It was a small community, right? But truly he's talking about the injustice. He's talking about the corruption in the system. He's talking about, now, Mu'adh was a regular companion, right? He wasn't going to be like running for Congress or going to be a president. He was just a regular person. The Prophet ﷺ is speaking through the generations. Okay? That anyone who's in charge need to be aware of this. So he's addressing all the flaws that could affect the state. Right? I mean, do you think like this small community in Taz, we mentioned it was in Taz, like how many people were there? Like tens, maybe a few hundreds, something like that. And the Prophet ﷺ was alive. Mu'adh probably, he was complying with the order of the Prophet ﷺ, but he doesn't want to go away. He doesn't want to separate from the Prophet ﷺ for a single day. And you know that Mu'adh was one of the most elite companions. It wouldn't be him who would oppress or wrong people or do any injustice, right? But this is a general advice to anyone who could take an official governmental post, basically. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So indirectly, the Prophet ﷺ is proactively addressing, preventively, precautionally addressing that, even in an Islamic state, you could have problems. You could have corruption. You could have nepotism. You could have oppression. You could have inequality. And that's why in the first one he said, stay away from their wealth, because it becomes a retaliation. Okay, we're going to get you. Next year, when it's time for zakah, you'll say, I'm going to see what I'm saying, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, no, you cannot do these things. You stay away from that. You don't do any injustice to others. And then in the following advice, no matter what it is, any mazloom, any person who's been wronged or oppressed, affected by injustice, then his prayer, because nothing, a lot of times, you threaten people, especially in a Bedouin community, in the tribe, this person has the status, they're protected, right? But the believer always, you have to go back to the roots. What truly matters is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the real punishment in this life and the hereafter is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do to you. And that's, again, the Prophet ﷺ is telling you, he didn't tell you, subhanallah, he didn't tell him, be aware of injustice, because you come back and we're going to punish you. Right? Or we're going to, impeach you, or charge you money, or put you in jail, or all these things are secondary. Telling you what really matters is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't want to ruin that. And again, you can escape the punishment from people, but you cannot escape punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See what I'm saying? So, and this is, again, relying on faith as a deterring factor as opposed to the rules that any smart Jewish attorney can bypass. This live streaming, right? So, does that make sense? Someone sent me this dumb video, actually. The one Donald Trump produced, The Art of the Deal. And this is, I'm quoting him basically. Whoever has more money and more Jewish lawyers will win in this country. So that's based on his book. In Islam, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, there are rules. I mean, we have rules, we have punishments, we have hudud, we have But more importantly, you do things and you don't do things because one thing. What's in your heart? The fear of Allah, the esteem to Allah, and the taqwa, the piety, the righteousness that will keep you online. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ is doing. And that's why the scholars talked about two things. Qualifications that would be available in a person to take any post in an estate. إن خير من استأجرت القوي الأمين. القوي الأمين. And so this is, when they were hiring Musa alayhi salam basically as a shepherd, for Shu'aib. This is what he said, or his daughter said, the best that you hire, you employ, is someone who's qawi, powerful, trustworthy. And then Sayyidina Yusuf, when he said to the Aziz, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض, right? Put me as like Secretary of Treasury, basically. Inni makinun amin. Makin, competent, strong, powerful, amin, trustworthy. And scholars have said the two aspects, the two requirements that have to be available in a person, basically to be in leadership position. Number one, the competency, that's their background, qualifications, the degree, the experience, all that stuff, but also the trustworthiness, that the piety, the iman. One without the other does not work. You cannot have a sheikh to become a president unless they have the qualifications. Does that make sense? And you cannot have a real estate mogul like become a president unless they have the piety, the other. See what I'm saying? They have both to go hand in hand, subhanAllah. And that's, you go through history from the time of the Prophet ﷺ till our time, through the Islamic states, the Khilafah. The decay actually starts when one of these things fade away. There's always an element of missing. Obviously, you cannot be perfect. You're not going to have Umar bin Khattab. You're not going to have Abu Bakr. These are the best humans ever created after the prophets, right? But as much as you can. So that's why Umar bin Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, and inshallah I'm going to conclude with this so we can move to the next hadith. When he appointed all his people, like whether they were in a post of wilayah, meaning in charge, whether they were treasurers, whatever, he would always ask Hudayfa ibn Yaman, like any of because Hudayfa was the secretary, the trustworthy person, the secret keeper for who are the hypocrites are. So he would ask him, like, is there any of them like a hypocrite? And Hudayfa said, yes, there is one of them. So Umar ibn Khattab asked him, who is it? He refused to tell him. He said, yeah, like, you have to find it yourself. So next day, he made some changes, like depose someone and then get another one. And then he asked Hudayfa, how about now? He said, now you're good. So that's basically what it translates in our life. When you do the background check, their record history, all that stuff, see exactly how good they are, right? Do they violate rules? Have been like DUIs and all that. These things do matter actually, right? Because that's what it translates to having what we call the integrity. Maybe the Amin is the integrity, basically, of the personality, of the character. These things, obviously, we're talking about an Islamic community, but similar rules with some variation applies to anywhere you go, based on, because any community has a code of ethics that people comply with, right? I mean, if you, just this is on the side, for example, the Supreme Court justices. I mean, do you know what screening these guys go through?
If they got a speeding ticket,
You cannot have a single violation, not a traffic violation, actually. So these guys are like the nerdiest of the nerdiest of the.
can't do it.
You're done. And that's what we're talking. That's the type of integrity actually we're talking about. That's someone who has not just started behaving 2 years ago before the election season, right? Someone like who has long history of clean record. That's what we're talking about. But I'm just trying to make it short and brief so we can move on to the next hadith. Any questions?
I find it interesting. I find it interesting how it's not random the placement of the hadith here.
I mean,
the second one is very.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you actually look at the Sahih al-Bukhari, I have a special lecture actually about the dynamics, like why is this hadith is listed after this hadith. You read the hadith 10 times, the two hadith, you cannot find a connection initially. But then when you start, oh my goodness, how did he think of that? Like seriously, like what was he thinking? Seriously, like how did it come to his mind? Subhanallah. These things were not random actually, and it takes a lot of digging through to understand, because he wasn't just like Googling and this is good hadith, put it here. It was an effort. It was istikhara. He would make istikhara 2 weeks before he selected the hadith. And then he would actually put the hadith, not this hadith, he said, this is going to fit here. Right? So over the years, that's when they assembled them. Same thing here. These things were not random. A lot of thoughts, a lot of effort. And subhanAllah, people who don't study the hadith, they don't appreciate actually what the hadith is. It really takes enormous effort to understand the hadith. Everyone appreciates the Quran, right? Even if they don't understand it, they say this is the words of Allah. But not a lot of people actually appreciate the hadith. Why? Because they don't spend enough effort learning the hadith. And this is subhanAllah why, I developed love to hadith, truly love and passion to the hadith, because there are so much in the hadith. An example actually you will find in this the following hadith. طيب, let's move to the next hadith inshallah. Who can read it for us?
I'll read it.
Bismillah. Let me see if we're on the same page.
Number 13.
طيب.
حديث أبي بكر وعمر رضي الله عنهما. قال أبو هريرة لما توفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وكان أبو بكر رضي الله عنه وكفر من كفر من العرب، فقال عمر رضي الله عنه كيف تقاتل الناس وقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله، فمن قالها فقد عصم مني ما له ونفسه إلا بحقه، فمن قالها فقد عصم مني ما له ونفسه إلا بحقه وحسابه على الله. فقال أبو بكر والله لأقاتلن من فرق بين الصلاة والزكاة، فإن الزكاة حق المال، والله لو منعوني عناقا كانوا يؤدونها إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لقاتلتهم على منعها.
قال عمر رضي الله عنه
فوالله ما هو إلا أن قد شرح الله صدر أبي بكر رضي الله عنه فعرفت أنه الحق.
Can someone read us the butcher the translation of this hadith. Now you will see why I'm saying this.
Hadith of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu. Narrated Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam died and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became the Khalif, some Arabs renegated, converted to disbelief. Abu Bakr decided to declare war against them. Umar said to Abu Bakr, "How can you fight with these people, although Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I have been ordered by Allah to fight the people till they say La ilaha illallah. None has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And whoever said it, then he will save his life and property from me, except on transgressing Islamic law, rights and conditions for which he will be punished justly, and his account will be with Allah." Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, "By Allah, I will fight those who differentiate between as-salah, the prayers, and the zakat, as zakat is the compulsory right to be taken from the property, according to Allah's orders. By Allah, if they refuse to pay me even a sheikh which they used to pay at the time of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I would fight with them from withholding it." Then Umar radiallahu anhu said, "By Allah, it was nothing, but Allah opened Abu Bakr's chest towards the decision to fight, and I came to know that his decision was right." Sahih Bukhari, hadith number 483, volume.
Very simple, right?
Don't pay.
All right.
Don't pay, you gotta pay something.
All right. So let's dissect this hadith. What does this hadith have? Because we're gonna break it down into different topics and speak about each one of them, inshallah. So, what is the main theme or the main message in this hadith you take?
Fighting against apostasy.
Apostasy. Okay. So that's one topic basically that we need to address, right? Apostasy. What else?
No separation between zakah and salah.
So rules are rules.
I'll take that.
Good enough. Let's say salah, zakah, same. Okay. What else? The main one that caught my eye is basically something different. So I'll see if someone is sharing me the same.
Is that about preserving religion? When how to preserve religion?
Like what? So I mean, just give me like what was the message specifically?
Quoting the Prophet
Saying what?
To the lives of those who bear witness to the oneness of Allah was protected.
Okay. So sanctity of those who declared faith, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So a declaration of faith leads to the sanctity of soul and property, or life and property. What else?
The fact that Umar radiallahu anhu and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu were disagreeing at first.
Sure. So disagreement.
Hypocrisy doesn't allow you to violate someone.
Hypocrisy does not.
Yeah, or claiming hypocrisy.
I'm not sure if I understand it. Probably you understand it, but you know, I'm a slow
So
person.
I guess all that matters is to declare that you're Muslim.
Okay, that's a good one actually, but it is mentioned here. It is kind of hidden somewhere. What else? What is the exact hadith? Because Abu Huraira here is narrating like an event actually after the passing away of the Prophet ﷺ. But then Umar is quoting the Prophet ﷺ saying something actually. This is why I'm kind of like made this the focal point. Bottom line is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, what he said. And that's the issue actually. That's where the meat is. That's where the problem.
Well, I found it interesting.
Saying,
That hadith, the quoting of the Prophet ﷺ, is actually part of a longer hadith that's also in Sahih Bukhari. I know it's in Imam Nawawi's hadith.
Yes, well, this is exactly, this is why I chose, I'm going to basically focus on it. But what does it say?
Spreading Islam.
Sisters, you can also have your...
Defines a Muslim.
At the surface of it, we're fighting people.
Exactly, speak up.
Fighting people to spread Islam.
Fighting people.
It's just fight against till they say la ilaha
Yeah, until they say
illallah.
Fighting people till they say, La ilaha illallah.
No, this is used by Islamophobes a lot.
Yeah, and this is exactly why we need to address it.
True.
Because it is shocking to me, honestly, that the translation goes in this book as such. Because this is completely wrong.
Wow.
And for someone, truly, I mean, someone who's trying to write an article or an essay about Islam, it's like, you know, all what they say, hadith number 13, this great book of Lulu and Marjan, you know, the one that is what scholars love, this is what they're saying. And he's just copying, pasting, right? And saying like, fight people till they say La ilaha illallah, right? I mean, this is exactly what the hadith says. And then it goes on Fox and you cannot blame them, right? Who fed them that wrong information? Us. This is actually what ISIS uses, by the way. This hadith is probably, I think all ISIS members have to pass, you know, memorizing this hadith before, you know, they make them active members, or at least to brainwash them with this hadith. And it's clearly mentioning, you know, that I've been commanded to fight people till they say that, you know. But what else? So we're going to talk about fighting today. What else?
The continuation of the message of Islam after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Because many of these tribes may think, okay, now the Prophet has passed, so we're going to pick and choose.
We go back to our old ones.
Continuation of the message of the Sunnah of the... What else?
Zakat haqqul iman.
That's good, but we already spoke about it, so I'm not gonna list it here. Alrighty. So this hadith simply, as you know, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, a lot of people, and again, remember when we just said human nature, basically, why give money? Or it's very sensitive, you know, and you cannot live in a utopia and think it's idealism. Oh, everyone's like, you know, gonna give their money away. They love Allah. No. People love money too, right? And here's an example where. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just like everything is falling in place. One, there is logical order here, right? And it's telling you, yes, this is true. What the Prophet ﷺ saying is true. Right? Example is, the Prophet ﷺ passed away. In no time, people stopped paying zakat. We don't want to pay zakat. We gave it to the Prophet ﷺ. Why give it to Abu Bakr now? right? And then that's basically what's considered apostasy. And why is that apostasy? That's abandoning one of the major pillars of Islam, one of the major must-to-do requirements in Islam. We're going to speak about this in general. I'm just giving you just the context of this hadith. And then Abu Bakr wants to, obviously, fight these people. Not just fighting them, you know. When he asked them to do, they insisted they're not going to do it. And they actually started mocking him. And it became like a matter, he's in charge, okay, do you enforce the rules or not? Imagine like, you know, just as a president, as a federal government, some people go and occupy a farm. It's like everyone claims their own estate, right? What difference does it make? It may not make a difference, actually. Right? Give up the farm. But there is law and order here. This is the integrity of the state. These people probably did not contribute much in zakat anyway, but it doesn't matter. See what I'm saying? It's a matter of faith, matter of the continuity of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and matter of respecting the law and order. Right? See, you know, when you use current examples, modern examples, it becomes more like easily understood. Like, this is exactly what it means. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna pay taxes. My taxes, let's say, only $1,000 a year. Well, you have to, right? Because this is how it works, right? Then Umar said, like, what's the big deal? I mean, why do you want to fight? I mean, for God's sake, this is a war now, right? And that's when Abu Bakr like grabs him from his, you know, chest and says, "Jabbarun fil jahiliyyati, khawwarun fil Islam." Before you became a Muslim, you were like a monster, basically. Jabbar, a tyrant. That's what it means. And now weak in Islam. You would expect Abu Bakr was the soft person. Abu Bakr was a very soft person. As a matter of fact, when the Prophet ﷺ wanted him to, you know, be designated the Imam, like, to fill his place when he was sick, Aisha didn't want that. He said, "Inna Abu Bakr rajulun asif." Awlayyin. Asif meaning like he's too soft. He'll start praying and he's going to start crying and people wouldn't hear him. And he wouldn't basically even be comprehended. So it's like, leave him alone. Of course, she didn't want people to associate Abu Bakr with the ailment, with the passing of the Prophet ﷺ. I said, like, does that make sense? Like, she was thinking ahead. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna kunna suwayhibatu Yusuf." Like, you're kind of cunning, just like the women of Yusuf when they had that party and invited him. It's like, this is the cunning aspect of, you know, this is like cunning, just like these women did. Said, "Muru Aba Bakrin falyusalli bin-nas." So you expect that soft person is say, like, leave him alone, right? Whereas Umar was always like, you know, ما زلنا أعزة منذ أسلم عمر. We've been, alhamdulillah, in أعزة meaning like mighty, powerful, in an esteemed position since Umar became a Muslim. But here, you see, this is the adherence to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And that's why everything we do in Islam is like weighing risk and benefit, doing this and that. And for Abu Bakr was always satisfying Allah, complying with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Everything else falls below in the list, right? Some people like, you know, war or no war, right? For Abu Bakr, okay, what is it that would make me copy or keep the path of the Prophet ﷺ? Right? This is all what he cared about. he's got that message, and he's going to keep that legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. This was his number one priority. How he keeps it? Whatever it takes. It's fighting, we fight. And that's why he said, in the end, if they are obstructing, like giving aqala ba'irin, like a small camel, like a baby camel, that they used to give to the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to fight it. You see, like he's fighting basically not for the money, not for himself, because I'm a leader. He's fighting for the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's the principle of it, of what, how did the Prophet do it, we're going to do it. The same example, the same model. Is that clear now? So it's the principle, it's the law, it is the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. I am not going to be the one who violates that order of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm going to keep it the exact same way. And this is exactly what he did, radiallahu anhu. And that's why, you know, that Abu Bakr was undoubtedly the best human being ever after prophets, ever. And basically, the scholars said, basically, this was an educational lesson to Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anhu. When they say that shake for Umar woke him up, basically, and woke up his faith and elevated him to another level. That's when Umar said, I knew this was something Allah opened the chest or the heart of Abu Bakr for, and I knew he was on the right path. Right? So, and this is, you know, the companions, they actually, the Prophet ﷺ raised them, educated them. But after that, they still took care of each other. Abu Bakr wouldn't let it go. Right? He had to address it right then and there on the spot. So that's basically when they fought the apostates here, and 70 actually people of the companions who memorized the Quran were killed. So it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of bloodshed to protect the integrity of the state. That was Ma'arakatul al-Yamama, as you know, when 70 people who memorized the Quran were killed. These are the first generation of the companions after the Prophet ﷺ has passed away. Then, what really matters here is, here you have a hadith in which Umar bin Khattab narrating, the Prophet ﷺ saying, well, you have a statement of the Prophet ﷺ saying, whoever says, La ilaha illallah, or I've been ordered, commanded to fight, quote unquote, the people, till they declare La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And once they do that, then they have protected, or they made sacred their souls, their lives, their wealth, except for what is taken in punishment, like penalty, when they violate the law. Basically, if someone kills, someone steals, someone does and that. Right? And otherwise, they're sacred. So how are you fighting them? Right? So that tells us basically violating the faith, compromising one of the major prohibitions is actually just like kufr. And that's why they call it ridda. Someone decides, you know what, we don't want Ramadan, we don't want zakat, we don't want... Even if they say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, that is what we call apostasy, that is kufr, right? Denying the order, denying the obligation of a certain requirement in the deen. Now, the Now, before we come to the end of time, I really want to address what does it mean, أُمِرْتُ أَنْ أُقَاتِلَ النَّاسَ, I've been ordered to fight the people, until they declare the faith, because that's basically the focal point in this hadith. So what does that mean? Let's just take a pause here and see how you interpret this. If someone meets you tomorrow at work or at school and tells you, you know what, I was on Fox News and they were quoting this hadith, so how do you explain it to them?
Were they at war with the Persians at that time?
No. The war with the Persians started during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu.
Sheikh, it could be said that the Prophet ﷺ giving this, maybe, I don't want to say this, but you'll correct me obviously if I'm wrong, but it was during a time when the nations, the world was divided into religions of Islam and Christianity and Judaism, which we don't have very simply today, firstly, and then also because we don't have an Islamic Khilafah established today. So, well, a legitimate,
you don't want to go there.
Islamic, it's also a way of debunking, that, because the person's going to ask the next question about ISIS. So,
any other person who wants to try?
I mean, I think the culture of the people at that time was very tribalistic in nature itself. So, to establish that this is the law and this is what the law that will be continuing in this land, you had to be able to essentially have those people under control. And the way to have those people under control would be to fight them, because that's what they would do to you if you did not establish that law.
The answer is much simpler than that. The Prophet ﷺ, yes, you wanted to say something?
Couldn't he have just used it like as a figure of speech, like to emphasize how important it is, or?
No. When the Prophet says something, it's a law. I mean, it goes... it's not metaphoric, it is not allegorical, it is something real. Simply, actually, when you read the Quran, the answer is in the Quran, because he used the word nas, and nas means people, but it could be specific people, actually. And there is a reason why it is interpreted that way. And he was simply speaking about the pagan Arabs at that time. As simple as it is, actually, many people do not have a hard time understanding how is that happening. I mean, it is people, nas is nas. The closest example to that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, الَّذِينَ, describing the believers after Ghazwat Uhud, the battalion of Uhud, he says, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. Those believers, when the people, same word, الناس, tell them that the people are gathering troops for you to scare them, said, it actually it increases their faith, and they say, Hasbunallah, suffices us Allah, and He's the best of to be relied on. Does that make sense? So he said, we are not finished with this meaning yet. I'm going to show you where this came from. So it said, Inna قال له الناس إن قد جمعوا لكم. So there are two nas and nas. They're the same, it's the same word, but I had it different colors because it means different group of people. So, and to have a symmetrical, those when say gathering for you. When the people say the people, right? So it's the same thing. When the people say the people are gathering for you, right? It's totally different groups of people. It's not the entire world, right? And these people actually were the hypocrites of the Medina. The hypocrites of the Medina, talking about say to whom? To the believers, that the people are gathering for you. Who are these people meant?
Quraysh.
The Quraysh disbelievers, the pagans of Quraysh. Right? Why would this meaning be clear to the Prophet at that time, alayhi salatu wassalam, or to the companions? Why would it be clear?
The context?
Yeah. Because he knew who was
More
telling.
than exactly. He knew who these people were talking about, the same people.
Right.
It's basically in the context of a circumstance, a conversation, that we know who these people are. When I tell you, did the woman come?
It's not every woman in the world.
Are we talking about all women in the world? You know, the women that are invited to the class or to the party, you know, it's the 5 people that we know who they are. And you don't have to specify, right? When I tell you, are the brothers coming tonight? Right? You're not talking about my brothers, my siblings. You're not talking about my brothers in the masjid. You're talking about these brothers here, because this is what we talk about. And that actually falls in this the. That is to define, right? But here to define, it's called the ahd. Define a specific, what they call al ahd. It's al indicates a specific understood figure, actually. That's what it means. Basically, we already know in mind who it is. Is that clear? And that's when the Prophet ﷺ speaking, like, required to fight these people or the people. Like they know that it was the pagans of Quraysh, the pagans of the Arabs at that time, till they do that.
So if it was meant to be the distorted meaning, then it would have been أمرت أن أقاتل الناس. Like if it was the general.
Al-Khalq.
It would have been like more general.
Exactly. This is what we call its general term. But أريد به الخاص رحم الله والديك. This is the am meant to be used as specific, as exclusive, actually. See how subtle that meaning is? It's actually in the entire hadith falls in this al, what that means here. Because that has actually refers to the, what we call to the jins as a species, as a class, or as a general, or istighraq, everything, or al-ahd, something understood in mind already. Clear? And this is what, this really very deep, sophisticated meaning. Your regular ISIS person is not going to understand. He has not heard what this al-ahd, honestly. Probably he's never passed it through in whatever they read.
It's called al-ahd.
Al-ahd. Al-ahd meaning known. Ma'hud meaning known to me. Al-ahd. Is that clear? And that's, this is an example I'm just, I'm glad, subhanAllah, that example came, because that shows you this deen is not a joke. No one can just open a book and play a scholar. It's really, I mean, do you know how many people have misunderstood, misused, and abused this hadith? I mean, tons of people. Okay? And it's very dangerous. Some self-proclaimed scholars actually still you quote this hadith and you see, like, jihad, we have to fight, and we have, it's not actually, it's it only takes, well, it takes a lot of Arabic understanding, but you have to basically, I mean, anyone who goes through systematic structured training, and just like, going through medical school, you know how to give a medicine. Same thing, you go through schooling, it's very well known. This is not something we're just making up. This is people wrote in books hundreds of years ago, before we're obligated to make ourselves look cool and nice and soft. We're not just trying to change the religion to satisfy and appease people. This is what people wrote in the scholars wrote in their books hundreds of years ago, right? So that's what it means. What it means in that hadith. When he's talking about, and that's the pagans of the Arabs at that time. Why did he have to fight them? Well, because people ask, well, why did he fight them in the first place? Because over and over like 23 years, they resisted nothing but fighting. They've always been, not even, leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. No, conspiring to kill the Prophet ﷺ. And the answer, they either become Muslims or they're always going to be enemies, trying to kill the Prophet and eradicate the Muslim community completely. And yes, the Prophet fought them, and when he conquered Mecca, how many people were killed? 3 people. He didn't go and it's like ethnic cleansing, right? This is what you would expect. Now, back to Mecca and just, right?
Why didn't he apply this thing?
Exactly. Why didn't he go just kill everyone?
That's what it
That's not what it, I mean, it was basically they either submit, right? That's when you're safe. And that's when he conquered Mecca, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, everyone's safe. Go to your home and you're safe. Basically, when people are, they're surrendering basically, and now the Muslim community feels safe. Is that clear? That does not apply now. Why it cannot? Someone's going to argue, no, I don't believe this meaning.
Yeah, can somebody just say that it is applicable to the people, which is the hypocrite, and then apply that to saying you people are hypocrites, right? Versus the...
No, I'm just giving you, this example has nothing to do with the hadith. I'm just giving you that how Al talks about people, because when I'm speaking about the brothers now, right? You understand who the brothers are. I go home and I'm speaking about brothers, and it's going to be totally different group. They're not the same. But it means that it's whoever known to me and the other person I'm having conversation with. This is what it is, right? It's very much in the context, in the circumstances of that specific event that we're talking about. Yes.
The question I have is how do we benefit from this hadith? Like he was talking about people back then, and how this is why I think a lot of people would misunderstand it. Like we have this hadith today, and I will read it, and that's the first thing I will think is that to carry this out. So how am I going to benefit from it, or is it just studying history?
Now that's why we're going to talk about these things. Our next thing is going to be what is jihad and what is fighting. Right? Jihad and war, actually, if you want to speak about fighting. right? Is jihad war? Is war jihad? Are they the same? When does this apply? When do we fight? When not to fight? Right? But that's not going to happen today. Yes. But I really want you to keep this, that the meaning specifically of this last year really means the pagans of the Arabs in Arabia during that time. And obviously that generation. Part of it is these people who reverted after, it's a continuum of that same environment, right? Which does not exist anymore.
The Prophet ﷺ is being quoted over here by Umar ibn Khattab as saying, I have been directed to fight against the people until they say. My question is, did the Prophet ﷺ say this multiple times, or was it a specific occasion? And what was the context at the time?
We have the hadith, as the brother mentioned, it is quoted in the Bukhari.
Well, what was the context when the Prophet ﷺ said
Well,
that?
that's exactly what he was
Just
talking
the
about.
pagans.
It's about the pagans and the Quraysh, basically. There are some other linguistic aspects of the hadith, but we'll save it for next time, inshallah. I'm going to stop here, inshallah, today. I think that I just wanted to make sure we address this point, and then next Halaqa, inshallah, we will continue with fighting.
So now I get the people thing.
That was a joke, just no, I'm looking at the camera.
We all look right.
I was like, wow.
So I get the people thing, that Prophet ﷺ's little hadith, but so just to go back to the overall hadith, so Umar radiallahu anhu is quoting Prophet ﷺ and using that specific saying, trying to argue not to fight against these people.
Right, because they already said La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. So that they're safe.
So this is like a limit. There's a Umar is arguing.
Yeah, once they say La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, you leave them alone.
And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu understood that wasn't the relevance of the hadith and saying
that there's no difference between
actually the answer is in the hadith itself. Illa a
the rights of Allah.
That was the understanding of okay. This is the haqq also. So when you violate it, then you're punished for it. Violated the faith, the violated the zakah as well. Right? Abu Bakr had the comprehensive understanding that faith is not only declaration, it's a comprehensive thing. Someone denies the obligation of fasting, that's called ridda. Someone denies the obligation of salah, that is called ridda. Any obligation actually said, even if they say La ilaha illallah, even if they pray, they said, you know what, that khamr thing, whining and prohibition thing, that was for the Arabs. Now, this is modern life. Come on, how could you have social life without liquor and without alcohol? That is ridda. So one of the aspects of kufr, actually what they call nawaqibul iman. One of them, nawaqib meaning what nullifies the iman, even if someone still says La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, is to deny the obligation or reverse the prohibition. Intentionally, knowingly. There's someone who could, let's say, drink alcohol. Tell you know what, I'm weak, I'm sinner, may Allah forgive me. This is a asi, this is a sinner.
Still a Muslim.
Still a Muslim, that's okay. You know what I'm saying. That does not make it a kufr. But someone tells you, no, this was something, for these 1400 years ago, that was their Bedouin community. Now this is like 21st century. I never get drunk anyway. So that's Ibn Sina said that actually. Ibn Sina, the famous scholar, and he said Allah prohibited khamr, wine, for people like ordinary people, like the Joe Schmo on the street, because when they get drunk, they don't know what they're saying or they're doing. I don't get affected by that. That doesn't apply to me. I'm still in charge. I'm still in control. See, this is how slippery slope, subhanAllah. That's kufr, absolutely. So, someone said, you know, this prayer thing, why do you have to pray? Just meditate, and I feel so good when I meditate. Right? This is kufr. So, it's really kind of subtle. That's why understanding the deen, understanding what it takes to fulfill the sunnah of the Prophet is essential.
Are you going to end up maybe touching on the incidents between Khalid bin Walid and another companion that was executed within that same era?
Within what?
Within the same context of where Khalid bin Walid executed, I don't know whether it's a companion or someone, due to the same issue, and the issue was taken to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr and Umar, they both reprimanded him, and they had to pay diya for that particular person.
I'm not sure which incident you're referring to.
Might have been the White House.
I don't. The answer, I'm not going to.
In relation to apostasy.
I'm going to have to look into this, inshallah. I'm not. Sayyidina Khalid killed a lot of people, actually. Some of them, many of them were by mistake, actually. Yeah. So, and they paid the diya for him as well. It was a mistake. So, but I'll look into this and see how this relates to our topic, inshallah. Alrighty. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله والحمد لله رب العالمين وجزاكم الله خيرا.